This morning on Today's Health, sleep apnea. It affects more than 18 million Americans. If left untreated, it can be deadly. Now there's a revolutionary new approach to curing it. Here's NBC's medical editor, Nancy Snyderman.
It's known in the medical world as the silent killer, and yet it's estimated that 10 million Americans with sleep apnea don't know they have it. 32-year-old police officer Matthew Stanislao felt tired all the time. But because he lives alone, he had no idea that when he slept, he stopped breathing 52 times an hour.
In the middle of the day, I would get these strange headaches in the back of my head, or you would just feel a little bit dizzy. And this is after plenty of hours of sleep.
After visiting multiple doctors, Matthew was finally enrolled in a sleep study, and within 1 minute, the problem was clear.
They stopped the procedure and they basically put me on the machine immediately because I stopped breathing for over a minute and a half.
Sleep apnea is a serious sleep disorder in which the breathing repeatedly stops and starts. The most common form, called obstructive sleep apnea, occurs because the soft tissue of the throat relaxes and closes up during sleep.
It has serious health consequences, including elevated blood pressure, increased risk for stroke, inability to concentrate, and weight gain.
If I could stop it now, then I'm actually saving my life down the road.
But stopping it isn't that easy. Until recently, the only option to cure sleep apnea was a complicated surgery that sometimes involved a tracheotomy and a permanent visible scar.
I've watched this field develop, and in the early days, which I was a part of, the surgery was rough and tough, and the outcomes weren't very good.
The outcomes from the conventional surgery are not the best.
When I originally did my research on this, the only things that were coming up were tracheotomies and where I'd be left with a stoma, and I just told myself that's just not possible. I'm 32 years old. I can't live like that. I shouldn't have to live like that.
But with new robotic surgery came new hope.
I hope I can finally sleep. It's been probably years since I've slept correctly, and there's been months where I don't think I've slept really at all.
Dr. Adriane Heckert at Somerset Medical Center performs a state-of-the-art surgery using robots.
Amazing, amazing view.
This is the throat like you've never seen it before.
This way, she can get to the narrow channel of the throat, removing the necessary tissue that's causing the problem.
Robotic technology has two main advantages. It has this high-definition camera that provides three-dimensional and highly magnified view, and the robotic instruments are miniaturized, so much smaller than the surgeon's hands, and actually have a greater range of motion than our own wrists.
Just 1 month later, Officer Stanislao is back at work, 35 pounds thinner, and feeling great now that exhaustion doesn't consume his life.
I feel great. It's literally been a life-changing experience for me. When I breathe in, it's like a breath of fresh air every time.
A breath of fresh air that helps not just Matthew, but the people he serves.
All right, girls. As a police officer, we conduct a service for the community. I just didn't realize it was going to be for something like this. But it's important to stay healthy.
And we're joined by Dr. Nancy Snyderman. Nancy, good to see you.
Hey, Matt.
Who's at most risk for this?
Mostly men over the age of 50 who tend to put on pounds over the years. The officer is sort of interesting because he was never fat, but he had sort of a thick neck and he had tissue at the base of his tongue that caused the problem. But it can happen to anyone over the years.
But why did he lose so much weight after the surgery?
So here's sort of that weird link. When you have sleep apnea, you don't sleep well. When you don't sleep well, you crave the wrong foods, and it starts to put in this really weird cycle of eating poorly. So it's very, very easy to either start fat and then get fatter, or to get sleep apnea, and then because you're exhausted, your body just naturally puts on weight.
Clearly, if you go to a professional, it's easy to diagnose. They diagnosed him in a minute,
Right.
He said. They knew. But what are the signs, without going to a professional, that should alarm people?
Number one, snoring at night. And if you follow that with morning headaches and a lot of times this daytime sleepiness where people say, oh my God, no matter what I do, I'm exhausted. And irritability, memory loss should not be minimized. This can really affect people's performance at work. And a lot of time bosses catch it first.
And when we heard the officer say that they found he was not breathing for up to a minute and a half, that sounds very dangerous.
Yeah, because what happens is if you're really holding your breath that long, what does it mean? Your brain's not getting oxygen, your heart's not getting oxygen, so you prematurely prematurely develop all kinds of problems like heart disease. You can fall asleep at the wheel, leads to diabetes, all kinds of problems. You may not need robotic surgery. That's the state of the art. But you should at least see a good ear, nose, and throat doctor who will diagnose you correctly.
All right, Nancy Snyderman. Doc, thanks so much.
Bet.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Matt.
And we're going to have a